Welcome to the first annual Back of the Rack Award Show. As some of you know, we've played 7 games this year that we've dubbed Back of the Rack, games long neglected and not respected that fall in between the greatest and the worst games. To celebrate, we've prepared 6 categories to which we will each select one of the 7 titles that we've both played this year. So we'll both give a brief reason for why we've selected a title for any given category. And then at the end, we will reveal the Back of the Rack Game of the Year.
Let's go.
To celebrate this year in Back of the Rack, we've also poured ourselves a little bit of some spirits.
Let's toast. Let's toast to a year. We did Back of the Rack a whole fucking year. Here's to a whole nother year of chaos.
Imagine a world where games... Well, I guess there was already a world where games weren't like as popular as they are now. And they're only getting more popular.
Like imagine a world where it was like still niche.
Where it became like extra niche. Like where it's just like, oh yeah, he plays I don't know if like PlayStation, like it's like a game. I don't know. Like I don't know what it is. And then he like plays the game. Him and his buddy. It's weird.
I don't know.
My dad's weird.
He's talking to some guy across the country. Like I don't understand it. I don't know.
I think he's gay. I think this is his secret lover. It's weird to me because they spend every Sunday together and they're 2 hours talking about God knows what. He always says that he feels relieved and expunged after he's exfoliated. He's satisfied, satiated. So he's doing something, and I don't know. I'm concerned.
He looks so happy when he leaves, and he just gets so upset with us afterwards. I don't understand.
Let's start with our first category, which is Best Story. Now, for anybody who hasn't watched all 7 of our lengthy Back of the Rack video podcasts,
if you did, I'm giving you a medal. Just comment in the comment section that you did, and I'll get you a medal.
Sondi, what are the 7 nominees essentially for all these categories? Because the same, yeah.
The 7 nominees for all categories, which are all the same in order from appearance. We have 12 hours of content for you to watch if you want to hear our full stories and personalization and thoughts on each of these games. But for Best Story, who do you choose as your winner?
So for Best Story, just to go over what the category is exactly, or the criteria, that includes great characters, overall writing, and great pacing. So it sort of has to have these 3 things for it to be best story that we both decided on. My pick for best story is Final Fantasy 12. Now, yeah, a lot of the games we played last year or for season 1 weren't really games. Yeah, they don't exactly. They weren't known for narratives, and also a lot of Back of the Rack games and the games that we're going to cover aren't really going to have great stories because it was at a time that stories weren't really like at the forefront, except for maybe in like JRPGs and stuff. You see that now more with like 2010 and on. I feel like stories are like way more important in games and narratives and all that. But I feel like around that time there was less of an emphasis on like how great the story was. At least that's what I've observed. So Final Fantasy 12, I think out of all those titles that we played, probably had the most intriguing story. It had the most characters I liked and I spent the most time with. So it could be that there's like a time bias that I have on it because I spent the most time with those characters.
You grew with everybody.
And overall writing was very solid. I just think that the pacing maybe wasn't super great with it because it's a long game. But I do want to give an honorable mention to Second Sight.
I chose Second Sight just because it was a game. Final Fantasy 12, while I expected, like, I think the precedent of Final Fantasy and the worlds that they build and craft, like, this was my very first Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy is so verbose that I know a lot of Final Fantasy lore without even having to play the games, which is crazy. And I already knew going in there that this was going to be a game. I knew that this was a different Final Fantasy from everyone else, that this was the one that was less about the characters and more about the world surrounding them and the politics. So I was expecting that going. I was expecting a good story, a good universe and stuff like that. But when it came to Second Sight, I didn't know nothing but the cover. And the cover is it's a very good art design. And then you go inside the game and I wasn't expecting the psychic powers. I wasn't expecting the plot twists, the turns, the thoughts that I had thinking like maybe this happened when this happened or maybe this happened. Like it's not as incredible or as grandiose as Final Fantasy 12, but the story and the way that the characters are all plotted out and the mystery of it all was way more intriguing and it kept me engaged even through all the frustration. And that's why I chose Second Sight as my best story.
Next is best gameplay. So the criteria for best gameplay is feels good to play, responsiveness, addicting, and rewarding. So Sondi, I guess I'll go because you just went. So my winner for best gameplay is Crimson Sea 2.
Crimson Sea 2? How did I know you was going to say that?
Because it's written on the document. Crimson Sea 2, I think, was the most... I think in our podcast, we mentioned that it was like an arcadey experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And it just feels it's very responsive, very quick. And it was addicting to me and very snappy. And it was the most enjoyable for me on many levels. So I think Crimson Sea 2 has honestly some really fun combat. And this is, from the team that has done the Warriors franchise, but they've added like some sci-fi shooting in there. So I think it feels and plays like a dream. My honorable mention is Resident Evil 6. And Sondi, you will explain, I'm sure, why that is. Yeah, what was your pick?
My choice was Resident Evil 6. And my honorable mention, I don't know. There isn't really anything that I could say will be an honorable mention because they're all kind of equal in my books, except for Resident Evil 6. Like Resident Evil 6, I've always said this, I still will say this, I will die on this hill. You can hold a gun in my head and say Resident Evil 6 is the worst Resident Evil, and I'll say no. 3 is, because Resident Evil 6's gameplay is just a star above none. Like Resident Evil 4 and 5 changed survival horror forever. Like, we still are experiencing games that are copying Resident Evil 4 and 5. And Resident Evil 6 was like the finale of a trilogy, and all the extra stuff that was added, like co-op in Resident Evil 5, they amplified it, because Resident Evil 5 added a lot more extra attacks, combat, stuff like that. And now the ability to slide, jump, move, roll around, all the stuff like that. Just having more mechanics to move and groove and shoot, not having to upgrade your gun, but instead upgrade your skills, upgrading the mercenaries mode to make it more expansive. Like, it's just the way that Resident Evil 6 was presented and the way that it felt. Even if it was an annoying boss or an annoying section, it still felt fun to play because of the way that I can maneuver around the world. And that's why I chose it.
Next category is best presentation. So the criteria for best presentation is basically best style, good style, great style, and art direction. So my pick, and it should come to no surprise, Final Fantasy 12.
Oh, I thought you were going to say second sight.
Final Fantasy 12, I think, if you've seen Final Fantasy 12, I think you can probably piece together why I believe it has the best presentation. Also, in our episode of Final Fantasy 12, we really go into depth on the art style, character designs, and all that, and where the influence is. But just to reiterate, it's a lot of like Middle Eastern, Turkish designs from like Mediterranean part of the world, which I think gives Final Fantasy 12 a very distinct feeling in comparison to like its other JRPG compatriots. I think, yeah, it's had some of the best style. And my honorable mention would be it's kind of a toss-up now on this one. I'm going to mention two.
I don't know, man. It can be.
I'm going to give an honorable mention to two of our games. Batman Rise of the Sensu, because it so heavily borrows from the animated show, which is so beautifully crafted by Bruce Timm. My second honorable mention is probably Crimson Sea 2. When I think back on that game, it had there was something very like 2000s about its style. Like, it all felt very cohesive, and I think I didn't really like appreciate it at the time. But when I'm thinking back on it, it had almost like a Aliens. What's that guy? H.R. Geiger, just like the guy who has a weird feeling to it.
Yeah, the dark corridors and the way that what were they called? The Crawl? No, that's Spectrobes. The Menace. There we go.
The Menace, yeah.
The Menace. The way that they evolved throughout the stages, you were kind of like, okay, this is weird. I don't know about this. Yeah, I can agree with that one.
So yeah, that's what I would say. What about yours? What's your best game for best presentation?
It's crazy to say, but Batman, but see, that's a cheat code, because all you had to do was copy and paste the animated series and just make it look good. And they did. And I mean, I think that says a lot that they were able to translate 2D animations into 3D landscapes and it still looked just as good. So I'll give them that on that. And plus, I like the way that there were certain things that I didn't notice, like Scarecrow's fight, seeing his shadow or seeing his footsteps in the smoke and stuff like that. I was just swinging at air until I found him.
Oh shit! I thought you were.
No, I was
his
just
shadow
hoping,
is on the reflection. Yeah,
like just cool shit like that. I was like, that's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
But for honorable mention,
if you don't say Final Fantasy 12, I'm gonna fucking scream.
I'm trying my best not to say Final Fantasy 12. But nah, you're right. Final Fantasy 12. No, I can't give it to Final Fantasy 12. Actually, correction. Swap that out. I'll give it the second sight. because Final Fantasy 12. Now, after playing another Final Fantasy, I can't respect it. For
Whoa.
recasting, I can't no.
I need
okay,
to hear. Okay.
I can't respect its spell animations after casting Fira, and it's just like instead of what it's supposed to do. When the other Final Fantasy game is a giant boom explosion compared to
you would
horology.
love the Final Fantasy 15 has some crazy ass magic. Like,
see, but I think I have 15. I think I'll try 15. I beat 7 remake, so I think I'll try 15. I'll try 15. Then I'll go back to like 2.
Final Fantasy 2?
Yeah, why not?
I thought you said you would never. I thought you said that people who played those pixel games were filthy pigs and were the salt of the earth or something like that, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, so let's move on to our next category. That would be best soundtrack. Criteria for this is, can you bump this in the whip? So me and Sondi are both music fans, and we both make music, I suppose. Final Fantasy 12 is my choice, and that's because it takes a lot of cues from some of the great composers, like, what was I going to say? George Clooney. The composer of Star Wars and like Indiana Jones. What's his name? I completely forgot.
You asking the wrong person, bro.
I swear. Nancy Ray. John Williams. That's why I was texting. His name is John Williams. So John Williams is the one who directs, who composes all that music for the original Superman movies, for Indiana Jones, for Steven Spielberg's films like Jurassic Park, and so he does all those themes, and you can hear a lot of that inspiration in Final Fantasy 12. And I'm a sucker for those classical movie scores. So yeah, that's where my award goes to. And then my honorable mention would probably be Crimson Sea 2.
Look at you, just having all my choices as your honorable mentions. That's so crazy. All right, here we go. You want to know why Crimson Sea is the best? Here we go. Watch this. Editor son, edit this in. And then it just like when it goes like, bro, like that main theme. You can bump that in the whip, my bro. And like, I really like electronic music, not just the but like the ambiance, the lo-fi, the chill. Like I like when it goes more into atmospheric and creating sounds, ambient sounds that can also be used in an electronic standpoint. In Crimson Sea's soundtrack, it does have a lot of the Warriors hard rock as well, but it also adds that ambiance and that electronic synth noise that just sounds so good, and I really like it. It's like really chill. And comparatively to a lot of the other soundtracks, they're very forgettable, like Batman's porn music or Bladestorm Nightmare's no music. Or
did you see that one of you guys out there commented on our Batman episode, our Batman video podcast, and they're like, it has a great soundtrack. And I just wanted to be like, you have terrible taste.
You watch a lot of videos you're not supposed to, my boy.
Yeah. You need to start muting the Pornhub videos, pal. But yeah, it was like
the music, because I just imagine he's probably gonna watch the award show and be like,
why are you calling me out?
What the fuck, bro?
I gave you my like. I gave you a like.
I gave you a comment, a view. I watched the whole podcast. You gonna say?
I watched the whole thing.
Great pot. You gonna say?
So wait, who's your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is none. Let me keep it real with you.
You have no honorable mention?
None honorable mentions, because as I look at the list of all the games that we played, none of them really match up.
I hate you so much. moving on to the next category, which is a very fun one, I would say. Banned from the rack.
Get it out of here.
The worst of the worst.
Get it out of here.
This is just a game that was just not a fun experience, which a game should be at its core. The worst of the worst. Doesn't belong on your shelf. It needs to be not even on the rack. It needs to be in the trash. So my pick. Damn, and now that I put it that way, I'm like, that's a little harsh.
That's harsh.
For what I picked.
That's really bad for the pick that you chose.
Spectrobes was my pick. Spectrobes. And
hang.
So I'm not a huge fan of motion controls when it's forced on you, especially when it's motion controls for a form. So it's a third-person game, and it's like it didn't need the motion controls because regular controls for a third-person game, I think, are far more intuitive. But anyways, having to like do this every time to like execute your special move,
having to use the fucking infrared pointer to carefully scoped out an excavation.
Yeah, which honestly, that was a better implementation of motion controls. I like when that happens, but like when you're fighting and you have to like do this to get your spectrobe out, or to do this to get your spectrobe to go, find fossils and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that's honestly the main reason. But every other game I would still like touch and wouldn't say ban from the rack, but I just couldn't even bring myself to finish spectrobes based on that. Batman I didn't finish as well, but that was because that shit was
just hard.
That was hard. We just couldn't. Like, it was fun for a little bit.
Like, it'll probably be more fun if we like got together and was like, all right, bro, let's just get some drinks.
Exactly.
And we just gonna play through the whole game. Fuck you real quick.
Right. Yeah. But we were playing
solo
from across you're on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. So
yeah.
Maybe we'll meet in the middle someday. We'll meet in like New Mexico.
New Mexico. New Mexico is the middle.
Utah's not the middle. That's 2 states above me. So that's Nevada, Utah.
New Mexico's one state besides you.
Wait, Texas? Oh, you're right. What's next to New Mexico?
You.
Mississippi? No. Pull the fucking map right now.
Okay. Oh shit! Yeah. New Mexico, nigga, that's right next to you.
Oh, you know what I was thinking? Louisiana. Sorry, I get
Louisiana. Those. That's still a break for me.
Okay, hold on. You're in Maryland.
We gotta literally go to the middle of the United States. What is the exact
Kansas?
Middle? We gotta go to Wichita, Kansas.
I've never been Nebraska or Kansas. I've never been to either of those. That'd be
that'd be a nice little trip. I got an uncle in Kansas. Cool. I think.
Wait, have you been in Kansas though?
Nah.
Oh, okay. Well, then we could be there. Anywhere down the middle: North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, or Texas.
The places that don't like black people. Let's go.
Texas is full of black people.
Okay, Texas, but we talking about Kansas.
Oh yeah, I don't know about. They need to merge North and South Dakota. There's no reason. North and South Carolina.
War. I feel like there needs to be like a Dakota war, and they just need to just fight it out.
Just be Dakota. You're telling me that North and South Dakota can't combine and be the same size as New Mexico? Look at that.
Nah, Jai, they really could. North and South Dakota could be the biggest state if they just like stop arguing.
No, they'd be the third biggest state.
I don't know, man. I'm just here.
Hold on, where's Maryland at?
Exactly, all the way. Like you gotta go all the way to the right, then all the way up.
You're on the edge. Oh, that's
very
why.
Top, at the very edge. Yeah, bro. Hold on, bro. Let's do some directions real quick. We are exactly 35 hours apart.
Bet. All right. Anyways, back to the program. Sorry about that, guys.
Okay. My band for the rack is definitely going to be the very first game we played, Bladestorm Nightmare, because I believe it's impossible to actually beat the original game because there's literally JPEG trees in a 3D HD game. The combat it's fun, but it's also stupid. Like I don't want to say stupid. Let me rephrase that. It's interesting, but it doesn't. Execution isn't really that well. And we talked about this in our episode where it's like if they're like how Dynasty Warriors is like as we play older Dynasty Warriors games just for leisure, like it's very interesting because the more I play them, the more I'm like, damn, I kind of do like the new games. They just add so much to make it just flow better. On top of the fact that there's a bunch more people on the screen and stuff like that. And I feel like Bladestorm is one of those games where it would have really worked well in like a sequel standpoint. But nonetheless, this isn't going to get a sequel. So we kind of just got to charge it up to the game and call it a day. I didn't like it because maybe it was me personally. I railroaded myself, but the maps are so huge and you have to go around so much that I stuck to using mounted combat and it made the game feel bland. And then the nightmare mode didn't really add much as well other than the mythical creatures, but they're really just reskins of other versions from the original game. So to me, it wasn't really like, I wouldn't go back to it personally. Like if I was to go back to it, I would probably just stream it or like play it in the background or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And my honorable mention is the same, Batman and Spectrobes. Even though I really like Spectrobes, I'll give it that. It's just I'm OLD, man. I can't do this shit no more, man. I got arthritis in my wrist and shit. Like I can't.
It's just too gimmicky. It relies on that, and Batman is just too hard. There's no reason to ever go back. If you're gonna play it alone,
there's no reason to go back. But if you're gonna play it with somebody else, it might be a fun game. Even now that we know, because we can know and be like, all right, bro, we gotta stock up on lives. Make sure you get the electric batarang going in.
That'd be fun. I'll drive over to you 35 hours just to play that, just to finish it up. All right, so the last category is front of the rack. So front of the rack, this is basically the big budget games that we don't cover on this channel. So we're talking about, your Halos, your Call of Duties, your mainline RPGs like, Fallouts or God of Wars, Horizon, like those big games. An example, and my front of the rack game would be Tales of Arise. So that's basically the best game that I played that was big budget that I just really like. I haven't beaten it, guys. I haven't. But I put enough time.
But I promise, I know this is the best game I've played all year. I promise you. I would honestly go with Ratchet and Clank, honestly. I had to think about that one for a while. And I was like, Ratchet and Clank.
Not Samurai Warriors 5?
Nah. I mean, because Ratchet and Clank is a pretty ass game. It's so beautiful. It's the first, like when I got my PlayStation 5, it was the same time that Ratchet and Clank came out. So I went straight to the store right after getting my PlayStation 5. Scary as hell having it, because I got it from a scalper. So like I grabbed my PlayStation 5, put it in my trunk. Did? Yeah. Put it in my trunk and went to GameStop like, nah, man. That's the first, like, there's Miles Morales has the same thing where like you play it and you just know like, yeah, this is next gen. But Ratchet and Clank, I was like, no, this is next gen. And that's a great game. Banned from the rack is Scarlet Nexus. Let's get that shit out of here.
You went back to no war. Okay. Scarlet Nexus, yeah, I've heard mixed things on it.
But now it's time for our grand event. You've all been waiting for it. We have stalled enough.
Oh God, we've extended this way. People are like, well, you guys are just talking about this. Did you guys forget? You guys were doing a show. We did for it.
We did for a second. It is time for the official Back of the Rack of the Year award. This is none other than the best of the best that we have played all year. The game that we will recommend out of all games that you play.
And now's your chance. Make sure that you text 54319 to the number below and send us your your predictions for who wins. And if you're right, you might win a copy of this game on some platform that you probably don't have anymore.
That you paid for right, with your own money.
Yeah.
Credit card rates may apply. Final Fantasy 12. Let's just get it out the way.
Back of the rack of the year. Why?
It's my first Final Fantasy. Listen, okay, so I specifically did not choose Final Fantasy 12 for all the other categories because I would have been Final Fantasy 12 for all the categories. It's got the best story. It's got the best gameplay. It's got the best presentation. It's got the best soundtrack. It's not banned from the rack. And it technically should be front of the rack. But as somebody that only knows Final Fantasy through Advent Children and Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy 12 as my first Final Fantasy proper experience was something I didn't think that I need and that I wanted, and made me play through Final Fantasy 7 Remake in the same year. Like, I've always had a lingering fear of playing long JRPGs because I'm always like, you know, you have a giant shelf and you're like, I can just play all the small games. It's just like when you're buying games. It's like I can just buy all the cheap games and then eventually buy all the expensive games. But most of the time, same thing with expensive games. Those longer games are sometimes worth more than 15 cheap games experience-wise, and that's what Final Fantasy 12 brought to the table. It opened up a new world to me, as well as just the strategy, the planning, the world of Ivalice and Rabanastre, and just the characters. Even though I still believe that Balthier should be the main character, it was a fun experience, and I think I'm gonna be like 6 Final Fantasies in by like March next year. Maybe download the critically acclaimed MMO Final Fantasy 14.
I think Final Fantasy 12 is the back of the rack of the year. Back of the rack game of the year. Yeah, because it's a game that was so heavily advertised when I was young, and so many people, like, I see it everywhere. Whenever I go to any used game store, I see so many copies of it, you know, and it seemed like no one ever really talked about it. So I think that alone makes it a great contender for back of the rack, because it's such a well-known franchise. It must have done really well sales-wise, because there's so many copies of that game. It's almost like how
but nobody talks about it.
Yeah, I'm like, how you guys all had this? You know, you always see copies of like all the Uncharted's, Assassin's Creed, because Call of Duty's, because those games sell, and so people trade them in, and there's different ways to play them now. And I always see a Final Fantasy 12 and a Final Fantasy 10 as well.
And it's a
common one.
Yeah. If you see any PlayStation 2 game lot, it's going to be one of these 3 games in there. So.
Yeah, they're always in there. And it's just like, these games must have sold. But it was a game that just captured my imagination. And I think that's what some of these back of the rack games, what I think that we try to make back of the rack be, is like we're somewhat on the hunt for a game that'll be a sleeper hit. I think too, back of the rack somewhat, I think you would agree that it like kind of means second chance.
Yeah.
Like, like we're giving these games like, okay, we remember it from back then. Let's bring it back. How do we feel about it?
Because our opinions both changed on Batman Rise of Sensu. That was a childhood game for us, and now no.
Yeah, and just even Resident Evil 6, like playing it now, because like the gaming medium is such a young artistic form of entertainment, and it's just interesting to go back to those earlier days and just being adults now and just sort of engaging with that content and then having a new opinion. And I think that's honestly like the core of like back of the rack as well. It's just like, okay, well, honestly, we should just change the name to Second Chance Games.
Second Chance Games. Hey, welcome to Second Chance Games. Or games. Second Chance Games.
In an alternate reality, it would be you and me, and it would be Second Chance Games. That is the Back of the Rack Awards. We want to hear what you guys are choosing for any given category.
Look at you.
Any given category. I'm a mess now. Not only that, but this is our, sort of New Year's present to you guys. This is the last video you'll see of us for this year. And going into the new year of January of 2022, we will be starting off with a brand new season. We're going to have some guests. So that's exciting. So we're going to have people like, should I say the name? I feel
Don't say it. Just let that shit, just let that shit drop on them. They be like, oh shit, they got Ray William Johnson on this one.
Right?
Oh shit. They got that boy Shaggy.
Holy fuck. How the fuck
did they get Barack Obama on here? What the fuck?
Michelle Obama too? We're gonna have guests on our main Back of the Rack podcast, which you guys have been supporting, and hopefully, you guys have been sharing. We're also going to be doing a new show as well called Back of the Rack Digital, which is basically a smaller, condensed version of our long form video podcast. But it's going to be more about indie games that are more current, because the main Back of the Rack show is definitely about older games. So like nothing past like 2010, so.
We might play a game on a PlayStation 4 or modern console with a remaster, but we're playing it for the experience of the older game. Right.
And Back of the Rack Digital will be more like indie games, because there's so many that are like download only and stuff like that. And we want to, shed some light on those. So that will be like sort of a collector's corner Back of the Rack Digital type series. And then also Sondi is going to be introducing his
selects, my little picks. I have a long list of games that I'm always like, hey bro, come on, let's play this. Come on, let's play this. Come on, let's play this. And
come on.
And he's like, no.
But anyways, we're also going to be, by this time, we'll have an Instagram up. So follow us on Instagram, and we'll probably have a Facebook up. If not, follow us on Instagram. We'll definitely have an Instagram up by the time this video goes live. So go check us out on there. We'll be doing stories on games we've collected and other goofy shit. And you can engage with us on there if you want. And that's kind of it. Do you have anything else to say? Oh yeah, Happy New Year's.
Well, if you watch this video at exactly this time, boom, right there. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year's, motherfuckers. Yeah. There you go. That's for you, especially. That's really for me.
But yeah, do you have anything else to say?
No, I fucking hate y'all. Get out my house.